In this lesson, we'll continue creating objects for the front side of our skyscraper. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we inset this edge just a little bit and created this shape here that didn't really sit flush on any of our three perspective planes. So I'm going to go ahead and continue building this front side of our building. And, up until now, we've been focusing on precision using the transform panel, and I'm going to kind of break free from that, and I'm going to eyeball a few things here just to get this building to come together a little faster for you. And let's come over here and grab this centerpiece. I'm going to come over and let's make a copy of this, and we want to make sure that that's coming into our right perspective plane using our perspective selection tool, and I'll just snap it in there, drop it in. Alright, so we've got this in position, and we've got a little bit of a challenge. We need to get it inset here just a little bit, but we also need to know where to position it in relation to these other two pieces, so it appears to be snugged up against this one when we inset it. So I tell you what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead, and I know that I can get that lined up perfectly on the 0, 0 point, or our origin, so I'm going to come over here and just select these three objects and check out the width of these 3 objects. So selecting these 3, I'm going to come up here, and it's 1.2069. Let me copy that with a Control-C. And what I'm going to go ahead and do, let's select this piece in perspective, and we're going to transform the width of this object to match that of the 3 objects we just measured. So I'll paste in that value here and hit enter. And you can see here that this object grew on the edge that's closest to us here. That's because we had the reference point set to one of these on the right side. So you can see it grew to the left. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is let's go ahead and switch this to this bottom left reference point, and we're going to set that to our origin here, our 0, 0 point. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and bring that to the front. Alright, great. So now that we have this positioned at our origin, and it's the size of that window and these two faces, or these 2 columns of faces combined, let's go ahead and just measure these 2 columns right here. Now, you can see here that we have a smaller width here. We have 0.4183. I'll go ahead and copy that. And this next part, you may or may not know about some of the number entry fields in Illustrator, but let's go ahead and take that value and select this object here. And I'm going to go ahead and select, again, a reference point on the right side here. Let's just go ahead and move it back to that bottom right corner. Now, we can actually input a mathematical calculation here into this width field. So right now it's set as 86.9 points. You can see that we had our unit of measure converted to points. Let's go ahead and input a minus sign and paste in our value we just copied. So we're going to tell it to subtract this much from our current value. I'll hit enter. And you can see that Illustrator has subtracted that again from this left side because we had one of our right side reference points set. So we've inputted that mathematical calculation. We have subtracted those 2 sides and essentially figured out exactly where this should go. Now all that's left to do is go ahead and inset this sum. So it looks like we're inset 1.71 points here on our y-axis. So let's go ahead and subtract this minus 1.71. Well, that didn't work. I tell you what we could probably do, though. Let's go ahead and undo that here, and let's come over here and double-click on the widget that controls that right grid plane. And let's go ahead and move that plane and selected objects here. And let's go ahead and move that back 1.71. We'll hit enter, and you can see that we've positioned our plane in the right position. So we've got at least the bottom part of this object in the right position here, and now all that's left to do is come up here and use sort of the same trick that we've used in previous lessons to move this top path back and then recomplete this shape. So I'll use my direct selection tool, and we'll delete these side paths here. And let's go ahead and grab this object with our perspective selection tool here, just this top path, and hold down the keyboard shortcut 5. And we'll go ahead and move that back perpendicular. Alright, we're going to get that pretty close. And I want to go ahead and just kind of stop right about there because I want to take a moment to talk about this object right here. Now, you may have noticed in previous lessons, as we were freeing an object from its perspective plane and assigning it to a new plane, that the bounding box changed. Now, the bounding box looks a little different. Well, that's because we transformed that object from its original state. So the bounding box is no longer snugged up really tight to our object anymore. It's actually filling the entire space of the object as it would sit on that plane. So it's going to be really hard to get an accurate read on this. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of break free from the transform panel, and we're going to start eyeballing stuff and trying to get it really close. So I tell you what, let's just zoom in here. And I'm going to zoom in as tight as Illustrator will zoom in. And let's go ahead and hold down our 5 again and adjust that to where it's pretty darn close. And it looks like we have a little bit of a gap there, so I'll just move that over and connect that to that little corner. Just like so. Alright, so that's pretty close. Let's go ahead and zoom out, and let's go ahead and complete this shape. So we'll go ahead and select it again and grab our pen tool with the keyboard shortcut P. And let's go ahead and connect these anchor points up. And let's select this object again and hit Control J to join that last open side. And now we have our closed shape. So we've created this window shape. Alright, great. So, we could go through a similar process as we used to build this smaller, lighter gray strip on the other side of our window. Or we could maybe come over here and use our perspective selection tool and just grab this shape. Let me zoom in just a little bit on it. And notice here that it's on our left perspective plane. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make a copy of that and send it back perpendicular to the original so we can maybe fit that in on the other side of this window. So let's go ahead and hold Alt-5 and move that backwards. And I'm going to drop it pretty close to where it should be. And then we can just zoom in and make sure it lines up nice and even there. So I'll just hold 5 at this point to line that up. Get that nice and snugged up right there to that window. And essentially we've reused that shape to create a very similar shape further back. Now at this point we're ready to go ahead and start doing something similar with these protrusions for these column pieces. So I tell you what, we need to come in and hide a few of these pieces first. So let's come in and hold down Shift and select a few of these faces that are closest to us on these protrusions. And let's go ahead and hit Control 3 to hide those. Well, it looks like we had one selected here that we didn't actually intend to select. So let's go ahead and maybe come through and zoom in just a little bit closer. Make sure we have these frontmost faces selected. And let's go ahead and select these top faces here. Holding down Shift again. Hide those. And let's select these two inside faces as well and hide those. So what we've got here are these inside faces of the protrusions, and then we've got this face of the main body of the window here. Excuse me, the main body of the building, rather. So this is actually the face that I'm actually going to target right now. And I want to make a transformation here, and I want to make actually a copy and move it back perpendicular to this face. So we can create the back side of our building. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and just hold Alt-5 again. This is already on our left perspective plane. So we'll go ahead and hold Alt-5 and make that copy. And we're going to move that back. And you can see that the stacking order is messed up, so we need to probably move that back even a little bit further here. And actually, as I zoom in here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap here, so I'll actually probably fix that between lessons. But let's go ahead and move this back a little bit further before we send it to the back. We'll go ahead and hold 5, and let's get that lined up pretty close here. I think that will be fixed once I repair that gap there. Let's go ahead and send that to the back. Alright, great. So, looking here, it looks like we may actually have another problem that we've just discovered. And I'm not sure if it actually happened in the process of hiding some things, but it looks like this plane got shifted down just a little bit. Let me go ahead and reveal my hidden items. And, let's go ahead and undo that. Well, before I do, I think I've spotted our problem here. Some of our stuff got shifted, and I tell you what, I'll go ahead and repair this between lessons here for you. And, when we pick up in the next lesson, I'm going to go ahead and begin the process of duplicating these protruded columns here and move those over to the other side of our building.